Today, we are beginning an intensive examination of a case that it really stands as a stark and tragic example of how a catastrophic plan, driven by a truly trivial motive, can intersect with the harshest realities of the American justice system. We are opening the files on the 2014 murder of Justin Back.
This is a painful and a very complex set of facts,
Yeah.
and we want to acknowledge the deep gravity of the subject matter. Throughout this examination, we will maintain a tone of profound seriousness, adhering strictly to the documented evidence, witness statements, and legal proceedings that are available in the sources.
Yeah.
Our thoughts are with Justin Back and his family.
Absolutely. Our goal here is to move beyond the headlines and synthesize the highly detailed and often disturbing timeline. We're going to be tracking the sequence of events from the moment the crime was conceived through the calculated execution and cover-up right up to the surprising and nationally debated outcome of the trials.
And that outcome really touches on justice and sentencing disparity.
It does.
To set the scene, we really must start with the victim, Justin Michael Back. He was born in February 1995. He was tragically killed on January 28, 2014. That made him only 18 years old.
Just 18.
And the sources, they paint a picture of a young life that was just full of promise. He was a 2013 graduate of Waynesville High School. And, perhaps the most heartbreaking detail is that he wasn't just idling. He was actively preparing to enter the United States Navy when he was murdered.
That detail, preparing to commit to service, preparing for a future, it just makes the sudden, violent loss all the more difficult to process. You realize this wasn't just a life ended, it was a trajectory that was violently halted. Let's now turn to the dark path that led to this tragedy, starting with the plan and the motive.
The crime involved two individuals, both close in age to Justin. We have Austin Gregory Myers, born in January 1995, and Timothy E. Mosley, who was born in October 1994.
And the relationship between Myers and Justin Back is a really critical factor here, isn't it? It's how this whole thing was enabled.
It is. The sources detail that while they weren't, inseparable friends at the time, they were childhood acquaintances. Specifically, they had attended the same middle school together during 7th and 8th grades.
That shared history, that past familiarity.
Yeah.
That's key. It explains the access and maybe the assumed trust that Justin extended when they later showed up at his door. The genesis of this entire horrific sequence, according to Mosley's later statements, it started simply. It started with money.
Mosley needed money, and Myers, sensing an opportunity, approached him with a proposition.
What was the proposition?
Myers just asked Mosley if he wanted to make some money. It sounds vague, but this question was the spark that ignited the entire plot.
And once that decision to commit a robbery was made, they deliberated on targets.
Right. The sources tell us they considered two distinct options.
The first one was robbing a drug dealer. And you can see the logic there from a criminal standpoint.
Sure. The risk of police involvement is often lower. The victim is less likely to report the loss.
But they dismissed that idea.
They did, in favor of the second and ultimately catastrophic choice, robbing Justin Back's stepfather, Mark Cates.
Why the change? What made them target the Cates home specifically?
Myers. Myers was the deciding factor. He convinced Mosley that Cates was the better target because Cates allegedly kept a significant amount of cash.
How much cash?
Specifically, Myers claimed there was approximately $20,000 in a safe in the family home.
$20,000.
That belief in a massive, readily available score, alongside the existence of a gun, it solidified Cates' home as the target. The promise of $20,000, which we have to remember was based entirely on Myers' assertion, became the devastating central motive.
So, relying on this substantial monetary lure, the pair drove to Back's home in Waynesville.
Their initial intent was just burglary. Steal the promised safe.
But as the sources document, the immediate plan failed.
Right. Upon their arrival, they quickly realized that Justin Back was home.
His presence was an obstacle, a potential witness.
Exactly. So they abandoned the immediate burglary attempt and drove away.
And this is the moment where the narrative pivots from a failed, opportunistic crime to something much darker.
To cold, premeditated homicide. Having failed to steal the safe while Justin was present, they discussed how to proceed. The sources established that Myers then dramatically escalated the entire plot. He allegedly suggested they kill Justin Back.
And the reasoning behind this extreme escalation is it's as chilling as it is calculated.
It is. Myers argued that by killing Justin, they could proceed with the theft and then, effectively neutralize any suspicion of their involvement.
They would make the incident look as if Justin Back had stolen the safe himself and just run away from home.
Yeah.
Vanished without a trace.
This specific detail, The intention to fabricate a false narrative to cover their tracks, it moves the crime firmly into the realm of extreme premeditation.
Right.
It was no longer a matter of simply overcoming an obstacle. It was a deliberate, manufactured plan to eliminate a life for the sake of concealment and profit.
So, with the decision to commit murder made, Myers immediately took the next step.
He acquired the tools. He went out and purchased a 3-foot length of steel cable and 2 metal rope cleats.
These weren't random items.
Not at all. They were specifically intended to be assembled into the instrument of murder.
The materials Myers purchased were immediately fashioned into a garrote, a throttling device that Mosley later referred to simply as a choke wire.
And with that weapon prepared, the plan for the execution, to use the garrote to strangle Justin Back, it was finalized for the following day.
This sequence, from proposal to preparation, it just demonstrates a stunning degree of focus and determination to carry out the murder, all rooted in the mistaken belief of that $20,000 payoff.
The sheer efficiency and calculation in this preparation, right down to designing a specific weapon meant for silent killing, it just underscores the cold nature of the plot.
They weren't just discussing hypothetical violence, they were engineering murder.
The morning of January 28, 2014, only serves to confirm the comprehensive nature of their premeditation. The sources document that before they returned to the scene, Myers and Mosley purchased additional materials.
Materials vital for the planned cover-up.
Exactly.
This shows they were planning not only the murder, but the entire cleanup. What did they buy?
Septic enzymes, ammonia, septic tank cleaner, and rubber gloves.
Rubber gloves. That indicates they knew they would be handling bloody materials. And the septic chemicals were clearly intended to dissolve organic matter. It's a chilling preparation for chemical desecration and disposal of the body.
They arrived at Bacca's residence around 1 p.m. that afternoon.
And the plan relied entirely on that former relationship between Myers and Justin.
It did. Myers knocked on the door, and Justin, recognizing the face of a childhood friend, let them both into the family home.
And for a period, they just spoke, maintaining that veneer of deceptive normalcy.
That initial conversation, knowing what they had hidden in their car and what they were planning, must have been an unbearable moment of hypocrisy.
The opportunity arose when Justin Back walked into the kitchen.
This movement separated him slightly, and it gave the perpetrators the precise opening they had been waiting for to initiate the attack.
And Mosley's initial role was centered on the prepared weapon.
Right. He was armed with the garrote, the choke wire, and also a 6-inch pocket knife. The sources outline that the attack began with a coordinated 2-person assault. Mosley attacked from behind, attempting to apply the garrote to Back's neck.
And at the same time, Myers moved to restrain Justin from the front,
attempting to hold him immobile to facilitate the strangulation.
But this was where the plan immediately deteriorated.
It did. Justin Back fought back desperately. The attempt to restrain him failed, and the struggle became chaotic.
It resulted in all 3 men falling violently onto the kitchen floor.
The intended silent strangulation had turned into a frantic brawl.
And it was in that struggle that Myers noticed the fatal error in the use of the garrote.
He alerted Mosley that the wire was across Back's chin, not properly positioned around his neck to achieve strangulation.
This moment, this failure, it sent Mosley into a panic, according to the sources.
His response to that panic was immediate and brutally decisive.
Instead of correcting the garrote,
he pulled out his pocket knife and, stabbing blindly in the chaos of the struggle, inflicted a stab wound from behind.
The attack then intensified into the final fatal sequence.
As Back struggled for his life, Myers repositioned the garrote, finally placing it around Back's throat.
And while Myers was applying pressure with the choke wire,
Mosley stabbed Back repeatedly in the chest. The combination of throttling and repeated stabbing was meant to ensure death quickly and brutally.
The sheer violence documented in the autopsy reports is just staggering. Justin Back suffered a total of 21 stab wounds.
To move from the clinical, calculated method of garroting to this frenzied, overwhelming use of a knife, it shows how quickly the entire plan devolved into extreme brutality and desperation.
The victim fought for his life until the last possible moment.
The planned, quick, silent murder was replaced by a chaotic bloodbath. But the initial objective, the safe, remained paramount in their minds immediately following the homicide.
Once the violence was over, the sources confirmed the pair immediately turned their attention back to the financial motive.
Mosley and Myers searched the house for the safe, which they located locked in a closet.
The target of the crime was secured.
And the focus shifted completely to covering up the horrific scene they had just created.
During this search, Myers also located Mark Cates's handgun.
which he immediately loaded. The addition of a functional loaded firearm into their possession further amplified the danger and confirmed their intent to use violence if necessary in the subsequent stages of the cover-up.
Then they went back to the kitchen.
Yes. Utilizing the chemicals purchased that morning, the ammonia, they began their desperate rudimentary attempt to clean the crime scene.
Trying to erase the physical evidence of the struggle and the blood.
Right. Though the sources imply that a violent crime scene of this nature would be impossible to erase with household chemicals.
And the next action was the cold disposal of the victim.
Justin Bag's body was wrapped in a blanket and placed into the trunk of Mosley's car.
But they weren't done looting the house.
No. Before they left, they ransacked the home, taking all the perceived loot, the safe, jewelry, credit cards, and bags containing Bag's clothing.
They departed the residence around 2 p.m.
Just 1 hour after Justin had led his assailants inside.
The drive away from the crime scene was marked by extreme paranoia on Mosley's part. He deliberately chose side roads, attempting to avoid any detection.
And during a stop, Myers, continuing his search for value, searched Bag's wallet.
And what did he find?
He found and immediately took over $100 in cash. Even after committing murder, the pursuit of small monetary gains remained a priority.
Mosley then proposed the disposal location.
He did. Drawing on his local knowledge, he suggested a remote site, a field near the village of Gratis in Preble County.
So they drove into the field, stopped about 20 feet from a log, and then carried Bag's wrapped body to the log and laid it on the ground.
What followed was perhaps one of the most callous details of the entire plan, underscoring Myers' commitment to obscuring the evidence.
He took the septic enzymes and ammonia they had purchased earlier.
And poured them onto the corpse, which was still clothed and partially wrapped. This was a clear attempt to chemically accelerate decomposition and conceal the cause of death.
But the physical violence was not yet complete.
No. Myers then suggested shooting the body. Mosley retrieved the stolen handgun from the car and handed it to Myers.
And Myers fired 2 shots into Bag's body.
And the sources document a crucial detail here. The gun jammed on the 3rd shot.
So Myers cleared the jam.
But in doing so, he ejected the spent bullet onto the ground, a piece of critical ballistic evidence that investigators would later recover.
It is difficult to grasp the cold indifference required to perform such actions after the life had already been taken. And yet, even after this, they entertained another horrific idea.
Yes, Myers suggested they murder Mark Cates as well.
Believing that this would make their fabricated story that Bak had killed Cates and then disappeared more credible.
Fortunately, they decided against this 3rd proposed murder.
The final phase of the cover-up then focused on destroying all the remaining evidence.
They threw Bak's laptop into a dumpster at a park in Brookville. They needed to open the safe, so they drove to Inglewood to buy a crowbar, which they planned to use at Mosley's house.
And this is the moment where the brutal absurdity of their entire plan is revealed.
After committing murder, desecrating a body, and orchestrating this massive cover-up, they finally managed to pry open the safe.
They're anticipating the promised $20,000.
And the sources confirmed that the contents were a massive, devastating disappointment.
What was inside?
Paperwork, loose change, bullets, gun accessories, and other random items, nowhere near the fortune Myers had promised.
The staggering realization that a young man's life had been brutally extinguished and they had risked capital punishment for what amounted to a few dollars in change and junk.
It didn't deter them from completing their destruction of evidence. They burned the papers, their bloody clothes, and several trash bags of evidence in a fire pit in Mosley's backyard.
And the final act?
Driving to Tip City, where they disposed of Cates's empty safe by throwing it into a river.
A completely calculated series of actions, driven by a phantom promise of money, resulting in the murder of a friend and an amateur yet systematic attempt at evidence destruction.
The investigation began almost immediately after the perpetrators left. Mark Cates returned home around 3:30 p.m.
And he found subtle signs that something was wrong. A moved table, missing rugs.
Soon, he and his wife realized the safe and the handgun were gone. When they tried to contact Justin, they found his cell phone abandoned inside the house, leading them to call the police.
The realization that their son was gone and their belongings had been stolen fueled immediate concern.
The initial police work hinged on a crucial physical detail provided by neighbors. Exactly. Officers quickly gathered a description of a suspicious car seen outside the home earlier that day. The car had a very specific, memorable feature.
It had a missing back window, which was covered crudely with plastic sheeting and red tape.
And Mark Cates immediately recognized this description. He informed detectives that Austin Myers had visited the previous day in that exact, distinctively damaged car.
This connection was the thread that unraveled the crime.
It was. Warren County detectives used this information to track Myers down, locating him at Mosley's house with assistance from Clayton police.
And Myers was detained and brought in for questioning on January 29th.
The day immediately following the murder.
In that initial interview, Myers was steadfast in his denial.
Completely. He claimed total ignorance, stating he knew nothing about Justin Back's disappearance or the burglary.
But the investigators had the car description, and they had already begun building a case based on the timeline of events. After interviewing Myers, detectives spoke with Mosley.
And based on the rapidly accumulating facts and the information gathered from both young men, the detectives moved quickly. They arrested both Myers and Mosley and transported them back to the station for more intense and focused questioning.
And the shift in custody immediately led to a shift in Myers' narrative.
It did. In his second interview, he dropped the complete denial and admitted to being present when Mosley stabbed Back.
But he carefully began positioning himself as the accessory, not the principal.
Exactly. He insisted he didn't know Mosley planned the murder, and, crucially, he denied shooting Back's body post-mortem, assigning that action to Mosley.
This attempt by Myers to minimize his role and shift the primary blame onto his co-conspirator, it had immediate unintended consequences.
It did. Mosley, detained in an adjacent holding cell, overheard Myers' statements, specifically the part where Myers tried to pin the murder solely on him.
And this acoustic confrontation spurred Mosley into action.
He then confessed to the crime.
But his confession was also self-serving, though more truthful about the core event.
Right. He admitted to committing the fatal violence with the knife, but firmly implicated Myers as the architect, the planner of the initial burglary, the man who brought him into the plot, and the one who had convinced him of the $20,000 score.
So now the core events of the crime were confirmed by two participants, but their respective levels of culpability were still hotly contested.
Confronted with Mosley's confession, which contradicted his version regarding the shooting, Myers was interviewed a final time.
And this time, he was forced to admit more truth.
He finally admitted to shooting Back's body, describing it as a foolish attempt at misdirection. He also confirmed all the planning details, acknowledging that he bought the critical materials, the garrote components, the septic tank enzymes, and the gloves.
But even in this final, more detailed admittance, Myers continued to fight the physical evidence regarding his involvement during the struggle.
He did. He insisted that he was not restraining. Back while Mosley was stabbing him, claiming he was frozen in a state of shock and disbelief upon seeing the blood, initially thinking they were only punching Justin.
This final detail shows his continuous, desperate effort to separate his intellectual and planning guilt from the direct physical act of murder.
This final version of events, combined with Mosley's testimony, gave the prosecution a solid basis for the timeline. That same day, based on approximate directions provided by Myers, Preble County Sheriff's deputies located Back's body.
And the autopsy confirmed the severity of the attack.
Death was due to multiple stab wounds, the 21 inflicted during the chaotic struggle in the kitchen.
The meticulous work of the investigation, following the lead of a crudely repaired car window, allowed them to piece together the entire gruesome sequence, confirming the premeditation and the amateur nature of the cover-up, despite the extreme violence used.
This brings us to the most legally compelling aspect of the entire case, which is why it drew such intense national scrutiny.
The sentencing.
Yes, the sentencing of the two convicted offenders resulted in a severe and paradoxical discrepancy, forcing a massive conversation about how the legal system assigns ultimate culpability in a felony murder case.
Let's analyze the outcomes individually, starting with Timothy Mosley.
Mosley was the individual who inflicted the fatal wounds. He pulled the pocket knife and delivered the 21 stab wounds that killed Justin Back.
But despite being the physical executioner,
Mosley received a sentence of life without parole.
and how did that happen?
This outcome was the result of a plea bargain agreement he struck with the prosecution. In exchange for the life sentence, Mosley agreed to accept guilt, avoid a capital trial, and, crucially, provide testimony against Austin Myers.
So for the prosecution, securing Mosley's testimony was a highly strategic move.
Absolutely. It was designed to ensure the most damaging possible outcome for the plotter, Myers. Mosley is currently serving his sentence in London Correctional Institution.
Okay, so now consider Austin Myers. Myers was the architect.
He proposed the murder, provided the key motive, the fictional $20,000, bought the garrote materials, restrained the victim during the initial failed attack.
And committed the profound act of desecration by shooting the body afterward.
For all that, Myers received the ultimate penalty, the death sentence. He was sentenced at the age of 19 in October 2014.
This sentence immediately placed Myers as the youngest inmate on Ohio's death row at the time. He is imprisoned in Ross Correctional Institution.
The central legal and ethical question that the media and our sources, including the Washington Post, focused on was precisely this paradox. How could the planner, who explicitly maintained he never touched the murder weapon that inflicted the fatal wounds, receive death, while the person who delivered the 21 stabs received life?
This question forces us to look beyond the direct physical action and into the mechanics of Ohio's capital punishment laws, particularly those governing felony murder and complicity.
Right. The prosecution successfully argued that Myers' role was far more heinous and calculated than Mosley's.
How so?
Well, for a death penalty to be warranted in Ohio, the state must prove certain aggravating factors. In Myers' case, the prosecution focused heavily on the level of premeditation and the timing of the murder. It was committed specifically during the commission of another serious felony.
The aggravated robbery or burglary.
Exactly. Furthermore, Myers was the one who conceived the plan to kill for concealment. This elevated his crime above a spontaneous act of violence.
And crucially, Myers' post-mortem actions likely sealed his fate, even more than his role in the kitchen.
I think so. He was the one who insisted on using the septic chemicals, and most damningly, he was the one who fired the stolen gun into the corpse.
That act, committed after the death, was used to demonstrate extreme depravity and cold indifference to the victim.
It reinforced his role as the principal orchestrator and added a distinct layer of cruelty that the jury found particularly compelling.
Conversely, Mosley's legal defense could argue that the 21 stab wounds, though horrific, were a panic response.
Right. A violent, unplanned action taken when the primary, calculated weapon, the garrote, failed in the chaotic struggle. And that may have given the prosecution enough room to offer the plea deal.
So the system was prioritizing the calculated, ongoing, malicious intent and planning of Myers over the panicked execution by Mosley.
And the extreme nature of the case and the national media focus ensured that Justin Back's tragedy had a broader legal impact.
It spurred direct legislative action in Ohio.
It did. Proposed changes to state law were designed to significantly increase penalties for murder, specifically addressing elements like extreme planning, multiple acts of violence, and desecration of a corpse, all of which were present in this case.
And these proposed legislative changes were named Justin's Law after the victim,
ensuring that the legal conversation surrounding sentencing accountability in Ohio was permanently impacted by the facts of this crime.
The case also captured international attention, cementing its status as a critical study in U.S. capital punishment.
Yes. The sources confirmed that the story was featured in the BBC 3 documentary series Life in Death Row in its second season, analyzing the application of the death penalty and the complexities of complicity in America.
Ultimately, the judicial system determined that Myers, the man whose mind conceived the plot, whose hands assembled the garrote, and whose decision escalated the theft to murder for trivial gain, bore the highest measure of guilt.
The judgment prioritized the guilt of the planning mind and the cruelty shown in the aftermath over the direct action of the hand that held the fatal weapon.
As we conclude this examination of the source material, we are left with the brutal clarity of the facts surrounding Justin Back's murder. The entire plot was driven by a completely trivial motive, the fictitious promise of $20,000 hidden in a safe that contained only paperwork and loose change.
The preparation was extensive, involving the creation of a specific weapon and the purchase of chemicals intended to destroy the evidence. The execution was chaotic and brutal, culminating in 21 stab wounds, followed by the calculated, grotesque cover-up attempts, including the shooting of the body.
And the end result of the legal process was a stark, nationally debated sentencing disparity. The physical perpetrator received life without parole, while the plotter and orchestrator received the death sentence. We reiterate our sincere sympathy for Justin Back, whose young life, ready for service in the Navy, was violently and unjustly extinguished by a betrayal of trust.
Reflecting on the materials reviewed, we want to leave you with one final thought to consider, based on the facts that determine the outcome of this case. If the goal of the law is true justice and proportional punishment, how should the justice system truly weigh culpability?
Specifically, when one individual conceptualizes the murder plot, provides the tools and orchestrates the disposal, while the other executes the physical violence in a moment of panic, albeit a violent one, where should the heaviest weight of the ultimate penalty fall?
This case forces you to confront how the law measures different forms of guilt. The calculated cold premeditation versus the chaotic brutal act. It's a profound question that lies at the heart of capital justice.
Thanks for listening.